Good morning. Welcome to this online worship service, a time set aside each week to consider what really matters in our lives and in our world. Our mission here at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. If you are a newcomer or visitor to our congregation, please visit our website, sunnyhill.org, and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill. We would love to let you know how you can connect with our congregation. Today's service is the last of our online-only services, at least for the time being. For the remainder of September, our Sunday morning services will be held at 10 o'clock a.m. in person, outside on the grounds, and live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. Next Sunday, September 12th, will be our annual participation fair. Representatives from various Sunnyhill groups will have tables set up on our grounds to share information and recruit new members. You'll learn more about our social justice team, caring team, facilities team, and many more. You'll also be able to learn more about membership, sharing circles, and religious education. We'll also have an Italian ice truck in our parking lot, so please plan on being here next Sunday. Today, as we listen to our opening music, we encourage everyone who is watching, not just newcomers, but everyone, to let us know you're here by saying good morning or hello in the comment thread on Facebook or YouTube. We would love to hear from all of you and have a chance to say good morning to everyone who is with us today. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way
I'm on my my friend.
Come and go with me.
Come and go with me.
I asked my friend.
I asked my friend.
Come and go with me.
Come and go with me.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way.
Which Side Are You On? The Story of a Song by George Ella Lyon. Artwork by Christopher Cardinal. My pa's a miner. Earns our dinner deep in the mountain, blasting and loading coal. Sometimes when he's worked a low seam, my little sister has to walk on his back to straighten it out. We live in a coal company house, on coal company land, and Pa gets paid in scrip that's only good at the company store. He says the company owns us as sure as sunrise. That's why we gotta have a union. Pa says if miners get together and say what they want and refuse to dig coal till they get it, that's called a strike. Our lives will get better. They ain't better yet. We are all of us. Me, Harvey, Hazel, Leonard, Elmer, James, and the baby, hiding under the bed. Ma watches from behind the door. Not hiding from a storm, or a bear that's got into this holler. Not from a thief, from bullets. They zing through the walls, through the windows. They ain't meant for us. They're meant for Pa. But if a bullet hits you, it don't matter whose name's on it. Pa ain't even here. Ma heard that Sheriff Blair was sending gun thugs after Pa. She got word to him not to come home, and he lit out over the mountain. We're in bad shape now, but if Pa got killed, he'd be sunk. So he's going to save himself in the Union. That's what this is all about. Ma says we have to be brave. Pa's counting on it. She creeps into the kitchen. Keeping her head down, she reaches up and lifts the calendar off the wall. What are you doing? I'm aiming to write something. Sing. A bullet just missed her wrist. Any of you young'uns got a pencil? We squirm around looking, but come up empty-handed. Ma finds a stub in her apron pocket. She uses the door like a table to write on. We can't move much under the bed, and it's hotter than a chicken coop. The baby starts to whimper too, but that don't stop Ma. We need a song, she says. Looks to me like we need a fort or a trip around the world, but that ain't happening. Ma just hums and scribbles on the back of May. When she stops for a minute, Elmer says, "Sing it to us, Ma."
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
I ain't on any side. I'm under the bed, and I want Pa. Shh. Your Pa's working for the Union, and the Union's what can save us. Looks to me like it's about to get us killed. They're the company's bullets. Why don't the sheriff stop them? The company pays them not to. They own Sheriff Blair as sure as they own this house.
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
If Pa gave up the Union and did what the bosses say, would they quit shooting at us? They would for now. And Pa could go back to work? Who wants to work for somebody that's been shooting at him? And if he did, he'd be a scab. Scab is a dirty word around here. It means you cross the picket line and dig coal when the miners are on strike. You help the bosses and hurt the workers. Pa would never do that. This ain't easy, but sometimes you've got to take a stand. I don't see us standing. I see us under the bed. Ma ignores this and goes back to writing.
Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
This is how the night goes. Bullets through the walls, talk under the bed, words on the page. When the thugs finally quit shooting and we crawl out of hiding, we're sore and hungry, and our house is busted up, but Ma has written us a song. When Pa comes back, he hugs us all. Then gets shaken mad. They could have killed every one of you. You too, but they didn't. And while they were trying, I wrote something. She sings her song, and Pa listens hard. Then he takes a deep breath. We can use that. It'll bring folks together. It did, and it still does. That song, written in 1931 in the mountains of Kentucky, in a rain of bullets, has been sung by people fighting for their rights all over the world. And Ma, Florence Reese, lived to tell the tale. Here she is on her 85th birthday. The end.
This is the time in our service when we share joys and sorrows that have been submitted by members of the congregation, so that the things that we are celebrating and the things that we are grieving need not be held alone. I have just a couple of joys and sorrows to share with you today. After each one that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." A joy from Krista Stanley. Krista says, "Welcome to the world, baby Max Apollo Stanley, 5 pounds, 15 ounces on August 27th, 2021. Mom, Dad, and baby are doing amazing. Can't wait for him to meet the Sunnyhill family." To Krista and Mike and baby Max, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow on behalf of all of us. It has been horrifying to watch the death toll from Hurricane Ida continue to rise in recent days in the wake of this devastating storm that has affected the lives of millions of people from Louisiana up through New York and New Jersey. High winds, heavy rains, and flooding have left many still without power, without homes, and in many cases with loss of life. To all those affected by the storm and its aftermath, we hold you in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Let us pause this Labor Day weekend to consider the work before us, the work of our careers and schools and homes, the work of our hands and hearts and minds, the work of our church, the work of nourishing, the work of surviving, the work of thriving. Let us bring to all this work a sense of purpose that stretches farther than just the items on our never-ending to-do lists. Let us bring a sense of longing that is about more than simply longing for the end of the day. Let us bring a sense of gratitude that encompasses not just the end of the workday, but the fact that we have work to do at all. Let us pause for a moment of silence, whether we are employed or not, retired or not, to consider what work lies ahead of us. In the weeks and months ahead, may we bring our best selves to all the work we do. May we love the work we do, and may we help improve the lives of all who labor. Amen. The song that Mary and I are about to sing is about the Aragon Mill, which was a textile mill that operated continuously from 1898 until it shut down in 1970, leaving pretty much the entire town of Aragon, Georgia, unemployed. We sing this song on this Labor Day weekend to remember all those people in this country and around the world who have found themselves without a livelihood as a result of corporate globalization, automation, and greed.
At the east end of town, at the foot of the hill, there's a chimney so tall that says Aragon Mill. For there's no smoke at all coming out of the stack, or the mill has shut down and it ain't a-coming back. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. There's no children at all in the narrow empty street. All the looms have shut down. It's so quiet I can't sleep. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. I'm too old to work, and I'm too young to die, and there's no place to go for my woman and I. 'Cause the mill has shut down, it's the only life I know. Tell me, where will I go? Tell me, where will I go? And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin.
In my family of origin, Labor Day had a real meaning and wasn't just a weekend for enjoying sales at the mall and backyard barbecues. My maternal grandfather, Grandpa Thompson, as we called him, worked the second shift at the steel mill in New Boston, Ohio for some 20 or 30 years. Having come of age during the Great Depression, he understood the value of a good job and the value of being a member of a strong labor union. Some of my earliest memories include listening to my grandpa play the banjo and sing some of the old union songs, a couple of which we're singing during the service this morning. I loved those songs because they seemed to represent a kind of David and Goliath battle in which the little guy really did have a chance to win as long as he stuck together with all the other little guys to get the job done. My grandpa grew up in eastern Kentucky, where at that time your only career choices were subsistence farming, trying to eke out a living and grow crops among the hills and hollers of the Appalachian Mountains, or coal mining. There was no high school in the community where my grandparents grew up, so 8th grade was as far as you could go, and college was not a realistic possibility for most people who lived there. When he was 18, my grandfather got a job working in a nearby coal mine. He lasted exactly one day. He just couldn't stand being underground in the narrow darkness of the mine shafts, so his mining career was short-lived. A few years later, after my grandparents were married, they moved to southern Ohio, where Grandpa found work at the steel mill and where Grandma raised 6 children, all of whom went on to earn master's degrees and were public school educators. None of this success would have been possible without the job at the steel mill. And the job at the steel mill paid a living wage only because of the work of the union. So as I said, Labor Day really means something in my family. For my mother and her 5 brothers, it meant that they were given a chance at an education and careers that they would not have had otherwise. In fact, my mother herself was a member of the teachers union and marched on the picket line when she had to, in order to fight for decent wages for herself and other teachers. One of the earliest lessons I learned was that you never cross a picket line. And there were some pretty ugly terms for people who crossed the picket line to work for the company in the place of striking workers. It was my grandpa who taught me the difference between scabs and yellow dogs. Scabs are workers who cross the picket line to work during a strike. Yellow dogs are workers who agree not to join a union as a condition of their employment. The power of the union depended on everyone sticking together and presenting a united front. Otherwise, the bosses would win and the workers would all suffer. I wrote the song we're about to sing, Leaving Kentucky, in honor of my grandma and grandpa Thompson, who continue to have a great influence on my life.
Back in Kentucky in 1930, the Hoover Depression was bearing down bad. With no place to work but those dank, deadly coal mines, folks turned to Ohio where there's jobs to be had. It's either the whole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mines and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or across the river to the promised land. The hills and the hollers of eastern Kentucky are sure enough pretty, they're a sight for sore eyes. But if you can't manage to eke out a living, you must leave your home if you hope to survive. It's either the whole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mine and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or across the river to the promised land. Ohio's got good union jobs for the asking. The pay's pretty decent and conditions are good. Still mighty hard just to leave the old home place where all your dear family has stayed and withstood. It's either the whole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mines and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or cross the river to the promised land.
The history of labor in America is sordid and bloody. It's a story of corruption on all sides. It's a story of greed and abuse. It's a story of often violent means used to justify morally questionable ends. Early in our nation's history, slave labor was responsible for our economic success. We like to think that only the South is tainted by the stain of slavery, but the fact is that every part of the country benefited. Southern plantation owners certainly, but also northern shipping magnates and mill owners and others. Not just the South, but also the entire eastern seaboard and New England thrived economically, at least in part, because of slave labor. By the time the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and put into force, a new engine was driving the American economy, the railroad industry. And it was during the rapid growth of American railroads that the American labor movement began to pick up speed. Railroad workers, especially laborers, were paid trifling amounts, sometimes just pennies a day, for back-breaking work, while the owners of the railroads were enjoying immense, almost obscene profits, which may sound familiar somehow. So the earliest, bloodiest labor conflicts that occurred took place around the railroads. Things came to a head here in Pittsburgh in 1877 when the Pennsylvania Railroad announced that they would begin implementing a practice called double heading, which meant joining 2 trains worth of cars into one train with 2 engines. Double heading reduced the number of jobs that were available, required more work from those who were left, and greatly increased the likelihood of accidents. On the same day, the railroad announced that it was doubling the number of miles that each railroad worker would have to work each day, which meant that they were discharging half of their workforce. All of this at a time when the railroad companies were enjoying soaring profits. Strikes began here in Pittsburgh, and the strikes turned into riots. In the end, 39 buildings were burned to the ground, along with the destruction of more than 1,200 railroad cars and engines. More than 60 people were killed, and more than 100 others were injured. Although the Pittsburgh railway riots were tragic, historian John French has pointed out that they ended up strengthening the cause of organized labor, which had struggled for years to form coherent and effective political and social institutions. He quoted a leader of the Pittsburgh Knights of Labor as saying that the result of the riots was to solidify and organize the working men. The labor movement in America is responsible for bringing about humane working conditions for all workers and for many pieces of legislation that protect workers' rights. Some aspects of working life, including the 8-hour day and the 40-hour week and paid holidays, are a direct result of people who fought and died to win those rights. At the same time, it is true that labor unions have been subject to corruption and greed just like any other institution. And at times the unions have seemed to be their own worst enemies, appearing to be more like petulant children than reasonable adults. However, the American middle class, as we have known it, would probably never have come into being without the labor unions. Sadly, many of our workers today are feeling left behind and ill-treated by the government, by their former or current employers, and by the unions. For some of them, the after effects of hazardous and unhealthy working conditions have resulted in chronic poor health, and they find themselves without much in the way of support or resources. For my grandpa's generation, it was a matter of deciding which side you were on. Labor, which represented the best interest of American workers, or the companies, which did not. Today, it's a little bit harder to discern which side is which.
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? 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 They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? 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 Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man? Which side are you on? 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 Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The nature of labor in America has changed dramatically in the last few decades. The labor unions lost much of their strength starting in the 1980s and continuing to the present day. We have moved from a manufacturing-based economy to a service-based economy, and globalization has forever altered, for better or worse, the way business is conducted. And the long-term consequences of the current pandemic make things even worse and even less predictable. The upshot of all of these sweeping changes is that the American worker is standing on very shaky and shifting ground. The 40-hour work week is now thought of as some quaint relic of the past. American workers are willing to sacrifice almost anything just to have a job at all. The coal miners of yesteryear were being exploited by the mining companies and had to fight for a living wage and humane working conditions. But the people who live in mining country today would dearly love to see the mining industry bounce back to what it was so that they could have jobs at all, although there is absolutely no chance of that happening. I don't know what the future of labor in America will be like. I don't know what lies ahead for the American worker. But I do know that one of the things our country sorely needs is a sense of solidarity, a sense that what happens to someone else matters to me as well, that each of us has a responsibility to look out for the good of all. If the bedrock of our Unitarian Universalist faith is that each person really does have inherent worth and dignity, then we need to look out for those who have been run over by recent massive changes in our economy. Sometimes in liberal circles, we tend to act mystified when we see working class people voting in a way that we believe is not in their own best interests, voting for candidates whom we are sure have no real interest in the welfare of American workers. But we need to understand the deep fear and anxiety and anger that people are experiencing. Solidarity in its truest, biggest sense means really listening and responding to the needs of others, not just offering a knee-jerk reaction or condescending chastisements. Solidarity means working alongside these others, knowing that our fates are inextricably linked to one another and that our very existence is threatened if we do not find ways of working together for the good of all. A living wage and humane working conditions are things that are worth fighting for. And it is a battle that needs to be fought, not just by those at the bottom end of the economic ladder, but by all of us who believe in justice and compassion. My hope and my prayer is that we will learn together what true solidarity is and how to practice it in our own time and place. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to join us in singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved."
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're young and old together, we shall not be moved. We're young and old together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, embraced by the light and warmth of our gathering. Go in love, ready again to struggle on. Go in beauty, shining forth like a lamp for freedom. Amen.